Okay, what I liked a lot actually about your presentations is that you, I think, made it very inspiring, but also very relevant and very practical. I think you also saw that in the audience. And I think what is also a common denominator in your presentations is that you all were very open and very frank. You know, no one has all the answers or all the recipes, and I think that's also very encouraging for all of us in the audience. I think we are all on a way, right? All on a way to somewhere. And I think that was very good. I think one thing that is very important in such events or conferences like today is that you always make a learning transfer. You always think about yourself. What does that mean to my business, to my situation? And actually would like to start with exactly that question. What do you take home? Maybe one inspiration you got yourself as someone that is deep into this topic, just maybe one thing to take home, one inspiration, one reconfirmation, or whatever it is. And maybe, I don't know, Maggie, do you want to start? What would you take home?
Sure. Oh, can I?
You have to take the microphone, sorry. We have to use those microphones.
I can hear that they can hear me. I can hear myself. It's okay. Yes?
Oh, you're still on. Okay, the other ones take the microphone.
So, Dominic, I really enjoyed something you said, and that was that marketers are overfishing. I thought that was really well put, and when you think about it in that context, it's absolutely true. I mean, stop, right? Stop sending me so much stuff. I thought I really appreciated that. Yeah.
Okay. Some other things. What do you take home?
Actually, for me personally, just in the last presentation as well, so we are exchanging compliments there.
Nice? That's nice.
It is, I mean, we are in the data analytics business since 13 years, and still I think we don't do it enough. So if we look at the charts you've just shown in terms of the percentages, I think it's still a lot about gathering data, and we are not even fully where I want to be, but it's too little about really analyzing it. So we know a lot, and actually I think we are almost a benchmark for knowing a lot, but you could get much better on that. And so the trigger for me is to really look even deeper into almost raising the skill of data analytics within the company, get it more at the table rather than having the scientist with the oily hands sitting in the cellars.
Okay, Erich, Joe, what do you take home as maybe one inspiration from today?
Mine was very banal. I'll connect with Dominic, and because I had a couple of smart ideas we could do together. But more importantly, I think also, again, Dominic, is a very serious chart that you spent, I think, only too little time, which is the topic of data security and data privacy. Because I think with all the wonderful opportunities of big data, analytics, and we get carried away with all that stuff, we as an industry, at least I can speak for the European industries, really need to take this topic seriously and maybe create, in my view, a counterbalance to everything is possible in other economies.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure I understood the whole point, Joe, but to me it was almost across the talks, the perspective of what is out there, what is possible, and what is realistic for a company. And I think to me the morning was about reality setting in some ways and perspective, because it's very easy to look at some of the cutting edge or bleeding edge sometimes practices, but they are not universally applicable to all situations. And I think in a context in Germany, I think that there is many other issues, privacy and things that need to be considered, that are perhaps more prominent in this country than in the United States. And I think that reality setting, that's sort of the biggest takeaway for the conversations I had at the breakfast and during this particular morning.
Okay, that's a good actually keyword, reality setting. I mean, we started the day this morning with this little research we did, and Marcus showed us actually the results. We asked you, the participants, how prepared are you or your organization vis-a-vis this digital transformation? And if you remember this first spider web chart, it was very thin. So I mean, people actually don't feel so prepared. And I mean, I could be now very mean and ask all of you, how prepared are you guys here on the forum, or even more meaner and say, how prepared is your top management on this? But I don't do that. I ask you something different. I ask you, I mean, what do you do as executives that your teams are prepared? I mean, what are you doing that you can progress the teams a bit towards this journey ahead of you? As one or two illustrations, just to give a bit of an advice also to all of us here, what we could maybe do.
I think for me it compares a lot to when I was in pure marketing roles over the last 10 years. I think it started with the agencies, who at a certain point, there were digital agencies and traditional advertising agencies, and they were specialized. And then you had this trend almost for the last 10 years, so it's not a trend, it's just something that is there, and I don't think it works, of advertising agencies claiming to be 360 and doing everything. And they just don't, in my eyes. At least I haven't seen one. Because there are very specialized talents still on digital and on traditional communication, commerce, and everything. So I do think we are still in a time of split skill sets in agencies, in companies, whatever. Any companies that I find interesting in a change, like for example Axel Springer in Germany, actually split quite harshly between traditional business and digital. You could have exactly the other perspective and say it has to be all mixed and whatever, but I do think we are still on the time of split behaviors, and then it's about talent. So you really have to aggregate digital talent in almost a box outside of your traditional office that raises a certain digital skill set to a level where it can compete with what traditional your company has done, and then it will merge. And I don't think we are there yet. So I think it's about splitting so that the little plant can survive, and it's about the talent that you need to plant into that pot.
Okay, so maybe let me build on this. So, I mean, you talk about capabilities, for example, that you have to implant these capabilities. But you could, of course, also say a bit more controversially, it's probably not enough. To your point, Joe, earlier, it's not enough just to do it as a marketing exercise. It's not just enough to bring a few young, wild digital guys in my team. Can I maybe say it is a mindset? You know, digital is a mindset, like innovation is a mindset. It's not a department, it's not a few young guys. I mean, Joe, you made that thing, it's much broader than marketing. Would you guys agree to this? And how can you install that mindset that looks at digital as not as a technology, to your point, but something much broader? How to do that? Can you give us a few illustrations? Some of you, maybe Joe?
I don't have any recipes, I told you. I can just tell you what we do at Allianz.
Yeah.
The more you relate it to sales and the business, the real impact, the better. Now that sounds like a trivial sentence, but that's why I'm not for disruptive innovation just because you do a disruptive innovation. I'm happy to do small things that make the lives of my agent better, because then I start creating sales, and with that I start creating this mindset. Because I'm also not a big fan of big training programs and getting all the IT guys and Google to do conferences. Yes, we do all of that stuff, but the real thing that made a difference for Allianz was really relating innovation step by step into the organization, always focused on sales. As simple as that.
Okay.
Now you need it. Is this live? Now I need it. Now I need it? No, I don't. Yes, I do. No, I don't. So when I took my role, I told my boss, who's the chief marketing officer, I said, in 3 or 4 or 5 years, this department should not exist. Digital marketing as a thing should not exist. There is no email marketing group any longer. There was, but there isn't. And so from a pure marketing perspective, driving it into brand, driving it into campaign execution, driving it into measurement, driving it into all the other parts of the business is really our objective. And I also very much agree with Joe that you want other parts of the business to start adopting it. Show them business value. Show them how they can drive revenue by, through things like social selling, where someone increases their digital footprint, their profile, they reach out to customers, they understand them better, they sell more, and watch how quickly the rest of the business starts to see the light.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Show results, demonstrate results.
It's simple.
And you get buy-in typically, right? That sounds like a good recipe. But of course, you also said, or actually you implied in some of your presentations, I mean, there is change, disruption, transformation, all these fantastic words. But I mean, it also, especially in large organizations, there's also resistance, complacency. I could call it, institutional antibodies, that actually blocks your positive virus, metaphorically speaking. How to deal with this? Any, again, not recipes, but any tips, how to deal with this? Any ideas?
Well, I look at least the clients we work with. The truth really is that the CMO or most of the CMOs I meet, they have so much on their plates, they don't even have to worry about digital. The truth is actually, like Joe says, he shares the responsibilities with the COO. The truth is, yes, we all like to do more in digital, but Maggie says hire marketing technologists or more digital people or more analytical people. That's not the CMO job alone. The CMO job also needs to own it and not just hire some data geeks or technologists in a department. And so that's what really happens today. And I think what I think that the truth of the matter is, there is so much other work you have to do. You have to reposition your brand. You have to talk to your agency. You have to change the creative. You have to review the customer experience journey. And yes, there is some digital sort of elements that come with it. You consumers now use mobile phones. But the truth is, most of the CMOs really don't address digital and technology in the way we all sort of oftentimes hope to.
Because they're so busy with other things.
With the day-to-day business
with the
and what is in place.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, no, that's what I'll definitely also see. Yeah. No, that's great. So actually, we tried to have a very colorful plenum here. I think we also achieved that. B2B, B2C, entrepreneurial, and these big, massive companies as well. I think that probably reflects very well the audience here. Small, big, B2B, B2C. And what I kind of found particularly interesting in a little chat we had, Maggie, last night is that you said something very interesting in my mind. You said, there's no B2B, basically, because even in B2B, at the end, there's always a person, a customer, not a business itself. And so if you have this mindset in mind, when we talk about digital transformation, what does that change? What does that change in B2B? If you have that mindset, at the end, it's a person, not a company. What does that change?
So I think we do have to acknowledge that the B2B purchase cycle is a little different. You may not have one stakeholder. You typically have many, and there are a lot of different people involved in the decision itself. So there are elements that are different from B2C. But before I had this job, I used to say to my B2B clients, you all think you're very special, and yes, you're very different. However, at the end of the day, you're selling to people. Right? My boss has a saying, which is, big glass buildings don't buy software, people do. And it's funny, it's like all of a sudden, when we're in a B2B marketing environment, we forget that we're people. So the messages we create and the things that we say just don't resonate, not just B2B, even B2C too. It's like we've forgotten what it's like to be on the receiving end of those things. And that's funny, because that's actually getting back to basics. And I think in a B2B environment, remember there's a human on the other end of it. Don't talk technology gobbledygook, especially when we're looking at people that are not technologists. You have to explain things simply. And of course, it's not always easy.
I like to, Maggie is from SAP. And when you look at SAP with a large developer community, which is one audience you have, and the large IT customers that you have. And what happens is, in your business, there is less of a line between B2B and B2C, because knowing about SAP, you have a very, very strong community building mechanisms on your website, and the SCN, I think it is called. And I think it's, however, you are a technology company, and I think where SAP is The average company that I know is totally in the opposite side. In technologies to connect with other people, like texting, is rarely done among executives. My daughter is doing that as a consumer, but among executives, the conversation is still not. I mean, the technology is still not adopted. So I would almost think that it applies in very technology-intensive companies who use technologies and the community and B2B environment you are. But in a classic consumer goods company, I think it's totally the opposite. It's almost Stone Age in terms of the way companies still collaborate and work together and sort of connect with other businesses. So that's it.
SAP is in a situation of transition as well, because yes, while we have the very strong developer community and of course our solid and loyal base of CIOs, we have recognized fully that the technology spend is diffusing and that people are selecting and purchasing their own technologies in their own line of business. So the way that we talk to the market, the way that this is a learning curve for us, the way that we talk to the market, the way that we talk to the marketer, the way that we talk to the HR lead, the way that we talk to the chief procurement officer. We haven't done that before. So we are also learning. We are also in the midst of that transformation in terms of how we speak, and we have to remember we're talking to people.
Okay, Joe, back to your point, this is bigger than marketing. I just like that statement. We actually just finished a chief marketing officer study at Vivaldi, and we also talked to many marketing executives in Germany, in German-speaking Europe. And one thing they told us very clearly, which fits this point, is, the chief marketing officer today and the future has to collaborate even much more than today with his other colleagues in the board. The finance guys, the IT guys, the operation guys, to build this entire customer experience. And actually, it's a very interesting quote from Gartner that they said actually, by 2017, the CMO will spend more time on IT than the CIO. It's quite a bold statement. Does that make sense to you? And if so, what does that mean for us here as mostly marketing people?
Well, I'll be provocative. It means absolutely nothing to me.
Okay.
Because what should I do with that? Am I now supposed to become a tech geek? I don't think so. In fact, I find those statements dangerous. Because if a belief is true that customer experience rules, and the job of marketing is to deeply understand the customer, and then to translate that into what are the requirements, I find the statement dangerous, because then the risk is you might get caught in the quagmire of technology, and you try and become a commercially oriented CIO or CTO. I personally believe strongly that the value of marketing, market management, is to always have this yardstick of the customer and the customer's voice, deep insights, translating the business requirements, and then to be very honest. I lead this whole effort of digital and distribution together with the COO. So we're a tag team. But I always tell him, look, Christoph, I absolutely don't care how you deliver it. I don't care. I don't care whether you program in Java. I don't care whether you use HTML5. I don't care whether you use iPads. I don't care how you deliver data security, etc. Here are the 10, 20, 50, 100, 200, 1,000 business requirements based on customer needs, distribution needs. Because I can only speak for Allianz. Once I try and start becoming a quote-unquote smart ass on technology, I'm losing any justification or value add. Because on what ground will I stand to push back against the tech geeks? My currency is customer and business and distribution. IT is going to deliver.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page. I think another way to read this quote is more like technology as being an enabler to what you want to do, right? So it's not that you have to become a tech geek. But we will talk much more about consumers and customers and people, because I also agree with what you said, Erich. It's not so much about technology, it's about people, and that's what we want to talk about next. And Dominik, you actually finished your presentation with this whole notion of, guys, be aware of the protection of the privacy of the consumer, right? Because you have a lot of data in your big warehouse, you told us that. But so that's one very important element. And there's sort of this old saying, life is about give and take. And that's maybe a little other twist about this discussion of privacy, of protecting my data, of my life, is if you or if we as companies, give a lot to our clients, then maybe they're also willing to give us more back, to open up a little bit more. So I just would like to know from you, what can we do? What can we give first to our clients so that they're also open up a little bit more versus being so protective? And you're, I think, a very good person to answer this.
Yeah, I think it comes back to a lot of the elements I also had in my presentation to say, first of all, the German market is extremely different to any other market in the world in that regard. No matter which data point you use, Germans are paranoid about data protection to a degree that I don't find realistic. But still, customers, if that's how they perceive it, it's their reality, and we obviously have to deal with that. And I 100% believe in this simplicity of if you give your shopping data away, and then the offers you get are relevant to you, and they actually function, they work, and they give you even a certain incentive, then a certain share of customers do actually appreciate that. And you have to be very transparent. You have to tell them, look, I use your transactional data. That happens on Amazon. That happens when you shop with us at a DM store or something like that. I use that to afterwards come out with a toothpaste I'm recommending to you. If that is something you find dangerous, then don't do that. Right? And you have to be transparent about that. And I do think what we lack in Germany from a political standpoint and also from a media standpoint is the separation of different classes of data protection needs, right? There is a reason why in a bank there are 2 meters between you and the guy in front of you, and in a supermarket there is not. Because toothpaste and bank details are something very different, right? But we have not understood that yet, right? It's always in the same pot, right? It doesn't matter whether somebody shops bananas or has an offshore account in Switzerland or something like that. It's all the same. Ooh, data protection. I think that is something we all as marketers have to work on to say, look, there's a difference, right? There's a difference between a banana and €1 million on an offshore account. And some is more, should be treated with more respect than the other. However, in the end, all of those data points have to be transparently communicated. It has to be very clear, this is what I'm taking and this is what I'm giving back. And our business principle bases on we take transactional data, we give that to the shops, we come up with more relevant offers. You might like them as a consumer, you react on them, and you have a higher incentive. That is the deal. We are very transparent about that. We do not share the data. We do not rent the lists. We are highly checked and controlled by different entities, a TÜV sign and everything like that. So this is a fair deal. So I think we have to split. First, Germany, very complicated market. Secondly, you always have to be extremely transparent. But thirdly, we all as marketers have to really drive this discussion of is a banana the same as a bank account, right?
So you have a bit of educational mission in front of you. But beside that, so basically your answer is relevancy, basically. So providing relevancy, getting me stuff that I really want. That's basically what you would like to give, right? You have to take the microphone. Yeah.
So how can you know what I value? If you sell your data, my valuable credit card usage data, and you sell them to Joe, and then Joe sends me an offer, and you have the pretentiousness to say that you know what is valuable to me. That's not fair.
Is that a fairness question or an accuracy question?
Maybe just answering on this question. The first thing is we're absolutely not selling any data. No data at all, which is true. It's not just a marketing claim or anything. So you partner with us and actually we send the communication. So if Allianz would be a partner of us, we would be sending the communication in our name together with the other brands. So we're not selling the data to somebody else or a third party or anybody that contacts you. I think that's highly important because people are extremely careful in, I gave my data to someone and someone else I don't know 2 weeks later contacts me with something I don't want, right? So this is the first part of the answer. And the second part of the answer is, yeah, we are a little bit proud in predictive analysis. So we do believe, and we can measure, that there is high likelihood that you would want what we offer you afterwards, which is obviously not 100%, but it's close to that based on data.
So let's maybe stay just for a second here, Erich, because you also made this point very early on, this is not about technology, this is about humans, which is exactly what we talk about right now. It's about needs. And, we talked a lot about small data and big data and what have you, and we also know that classical research is dead, you also made that point in a way, if you ask people, what do you like, they don't give maybe the right answer. So, Erich, can you give us a few hints? How do we know what consumers really want? And how can we also maybe use digital technology beyond the transactional and communication data that you talked about? What can we do then to get a little bit of bigger, better grasp of what people want today and in the future?
I don't think that anybody can predict the future or can predict forward. I think we are all in a learning experience. It's almost like we are in America, we would say, in spring training. We're sort of practicing for the big season. And I think that's where we are. Over time, we will be more comfortable with data. In America, there was a big experiment just in New York and the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl was at the end, I think February 2 on a Sunday. All the major stores around the area, Macy's and Abercrombie and Fitch, distributed sensors in locations. And these sensors capture data from people walking by and make an offer, a relevant offer to them. That's, when you think about it, a utopia. It's sort of totally out there, but it's 80,000 developers and companies have now signed up to this iBeacon technology, these sensors, which would mean that whether you like it or not, we will map people's movements, the action connected learning, I think you said something like that, in the real life, not just online. And right now we're all scared about it, but I think we are just in the beginning. We just sort of have to learn where we are comfortable and when we are not. So I think, and this is happening, and depending how this evolution takes place, you can give an answer to how marketing is changing, the research part is changing. But I think we don't know right now, we're just practicing, and we're sort of like scared of some of the things, but I think it's going away with time.
But can I also say, basically also what you talked about before, this beer example, this episode tracking, could I also say that it's also going in a direction of not just asking people what they will do, but actually observing what people actually do, yes, and use this as a predictive matter, because that's probably much better to observe what they actually do, not just what they say they will do, right?
So the interesting finding from that particular study is, at first people say, you mean, you want me to record my beverage consumption? Excuse me, So what happens is that first, what we do is we ask 250 people to participate in it. Then we find that 100 people absolutely don't participate, and 150 sort of once in a while. We recontact those persons. Then they start to we train them almost over a week or two in recording the episodes. And at the end, people actually find it very rewarding and meaningful. And after about 2 weeks or 3 weeks, people have no problem sharing their information. That's, I think, where it's going. And then, when people then, without really being conscious about it, just sort of record their behaviors, if you're the episodes, then we get really meaningful data that we can help and consumers. And I think and have a database from which to really tell why consumers behave the way they behave without asking them.
That's basically the added value piece, which is not, it's just basically add meaning to the data, I would call it, right? Okay.
That's right.
Maggie, you had the build.
So I think one thing that's sort of interesting to think about, if we just take a big step back and think of ourselves as individuals rather than marketers, is that the current equation, the transaction right now, is that I give my data to a company so the company can sell me stuff. Right? Which fundamentally, I'm not sure what's in that for me. Right. Yes, I may learn about purchasing things I may not otherwise know about, but ultimately I'm parting with money, right? So I'm giving you something only to part with something else in exchange for something. I would love it if someday we started to think more about data marketplaces and exchanging your data for something that was very valuable in a very clear and transparent way. Because I do find, I think the American environment, Canada is a little more restrictive, but the American environment is really quite insane. When you think about, the amount of data that is shared and taken, and it's not disclosed, and what people can. If you look at the Target example, did those individuals realize that they were providing enough data that very personal details about them could be predicted? Probably not. And so fundamentally, the idea of data as a commodity, that sites like Amazon, it's a natural resource. They have this huge stores of data that they're able to use to build their business model on. And we who contributed that data, our benefit is to be able to purchase things from them. Just a bit of framing that up a little differently.
I think that's a good build. Thank you. It's a good build. Joe, back to you. You talked in your presentation also about basically new business models. I think I could say that. Also about value chain, sort of a new kind of value chain. So in your experience, what are sort of the most neglected parts of this digital or holistic value chain? Or what did you find most important to sort of fix in your personal experience at Allianz?
In insurance.
In insurance.
For
Allianz. Example, or maybe also something that is generally applicable, definitely?
I don't know about generally applicable. Which element was the most drastic gap? Every single one of them. And I'm
okay.
It's not a funny statement, but if you take a customer experience seriously, you just go through the funnel. Where and how do you create awareness and relevance for the client? So you're right up on the funnel. What does classical insurance do? 80% advertising. How do we treat clients when we write letters? Most of you don't like the letters that you receive from an insurance company, I guess. I guess your massive customer touch point with your insurance company has been once a year, if you have not had a claim. It's been a piece of paper, and on that piece of paper, in general, there was a number that was higher than the number that was there the year before, a price increase, right? And it was written most probably in German, English, French, Dutch, or whatever in a language that you didn't really like. That's the customer experience of insurance. Then when you had a claim, of course with Allianz you'll have a superior experience, but with other companies it might not be like that. But you see, the point is you can really dissect the insurance industry, and I'm being skeptical of my own industry, I'm being honest about my own industry here, is that literally every single element of the value chain needs to be improved. Literally. Which are the most critical ones? I think you can argue. You could say we've got to first fix the claims experience because that's the moment of truth. Statistically, however, only 15% of a portfolio have a claim. That means every one of you in general has every 7 years a claim. That's not going to radically change our relationship with you. So we move more to the front end of the funnel, which is marketing, providing superior products, providing a superior agent experience. But that's a strategic choice, because every single element, I believe, in the value chain has to be radically transformed, radically. And what I showed you there was not a new business model. That was classic, that film was not a new business model, that was classic insurance 2.0.
Yeah.
So we weren't reinventing our business model, we are reinvigorating it, relaunching our business model, I'd say.
That makes sense. Let's stay for a minute with this idea of the customer experience, because I think most of you actually addressed it explicitly in your presentations. And my observation is that many companies have a very fragmented experience. And why is that? Often because there are silos, right? There are different departments in charge of the entire customer experience. So as a CMO, we typically only control part of that customer experience. However, I as a consumer see only one Allianz. I only see one SAP and only see one Payback. So it's only, So how, Maggie, maybe to you, you started relatively recently. What do you do specifically to make sure that you have at least one holistic, congruent, consistent digital customer experience. How do you get about it?
So it's we maybe are a little unique among those of us on the panel in that we actually have a fairly complex digital experience. We are a complicated company that sells complicated things. And unfortunately, organizations, again, we forget that we're selling to people and we're talking to people. And sometimes we focus on what we want to say as opposed to what others need from us. So there are a couple of issues that we typically see in environments like this, and I can speak to this from a consulting perspective years ago, where you have multiple digital footprints because lots of people have things they need to do, campaigns or otherwise, and then the language itself, the content itself, sometimes is not easily consumed. So from our perspective, addressing an issue which many companies have a legacy web environment that tends to be complex, it's drastically simplifying it and really trying to imbue everything we do with what the customer needs. So we are not focusing on what we want to say. We're trying to train ourselves out of that, and we're really thinking about what does that customer experience look like. And unfortunately, at the moment, from an SAP perspective, it can be fairly complex. We have multiple entry points, and we've really recognized that simplification is the way to go, and we need to simplify that down to something that's very easy to navigate. That's the expectation now.
May I just question then? Is it possible that the marketing department at SAP, just like the marketing department at Allianz, is actually in this process of digital transformation or Darwinism, is actually marginalized? More and more, because the customer experience is not owned anymore. Joe is not managing the customer experience anymore. He shares it with this COO, for God's sake. And in your company, you have so many salespeople and a sales force out there who actually manage the customer experience, and especially in a B2B context. So maybe the distinct possibility that marketing or the CMO job is actually marginalized into doing a few things, and the digital transformation is taking place outside the marketing department.
So I would say for us, it's the complete opposite. The business has actually turned to marketing and said, you need to fix this. You need to help us be simpler and help us be easier to do business with from a digital perspective. So that is a charge directly from our CEOs saying this, we need to be easy to do business with online. And we actually see, and I see in our organization, I'm relatively new to it, that again, as I spoke about, we have an opportunity to drive business through insight from the marketplace, that we're right there. We have the data. If we can analyze it and tell the story about what it means to the business and help drive revenue and help get people closer to their objectives, it only strengthens our position. So at SAP, I see marketing becoming much more strategic and really being regarded as a business driver. I don't know what you see, Joe.
Clear mandate, yeah.
You smile.
Yeah, I always smile when Erich throws in these little bombs. In the end of the day, I like to be also very blunt. I don't care. Actually, I get the biggest kick out of it when my COO talks about the customer experience. I go to workshops and have CEOs drawing customer journeys. You know what? I've achieved more than 100 marketing people dancing around a conference talking about digital whatever. Because that is when the business transformers, the business leaders, truly believe. That's when you have done your job, basically. So in the ultimate form, you could close down the marketing department when every single person in the company is a marketeer.
It would almost be a wonderful final quote here. And actually, we will open it up in just 2 minutes or so. So start to think about maybe your own questions to the guys over here on the podium. But let me maybe go to a very last round and actually face to you, Domminik. Because, one of the big buzzwords of these days is customer centricity, right? Every company wants to be customer centric. Some are. Some wants to become customer centric. And you won actually awards for customer centricity. Can you give us a couple of success factors, a couple of pitfalls as well, in a nutshell?
In the end, customer centricity in my eyes is nothing more than a buzzword again for everything we said throughout the discussion right now, right? It's a focus on the customer. What do they need? What do they want? Taking that as the basis of marketing means and technological solutions, right?
How to do it?
So in the end, I think it starts at the top of a company to always ask the question of, is that something that we're doing there really beneficial to which group of our customers, rather than starting with the discussion of, is it a 10 million euro, 20 million euro, or 13 million euro worth of an effort, right? Or billions. Sorry, I'm a lower scale there. So in the end, it starts there. It starts in how you ask the questions. It goes into what kind of people do you have? Are you connected enough to this strange individual, which is your customer? Or is that something that is almost shielded behind research and other diluting elements, right? So are you close enough to your customer to understand what he wants and to afterwards put that into action? I think that's essentially it. And that even closes with the more problematic topics we've touched, like overfishing of like, is it close to a customer to just send 250 more emails to this guy throughout the year and then wonder why he starts not to react, right? Is it customer-centric to treat his data without respect and sell it to other companies? No, obviously not, right? I mean, these questions all come back to the point of, is it good for your customer what you're doing there? If it is, it might end up in a very good business result. If it's not, it will always pay off in a negative way throughout your journey.
Good. I think let's keep it here. I think it was very, very clear words and very insightful discussion. I want to thank you very much for this. I give it over to you, Marcus, and actually to you for the Q&A.
Thank you, Roland. Thank you, guys. So the panel is open now, and we'd like you to join to not only ask questions, maybe also share your thoughts. And we have people running around with microphones, so it'll be easy to ask a question, maybe in German, maybe in English, as you prefer. I see already the first questions there.
Hello. Good. Hi. Alex Clemente with the Harvard Business Review. Thank you for your presentation and discussion this morning. I have a question. We've been conducting some research with the HBR audience, and this whole customer centrism and customer experience, the vast majority of our readers are saying just how important it is, particularly to their future success. But many of them are struggling with turning that into profit. So I was just curious if one of you or the group could actually take on that and what the answers might be.
Yeah, I think that would have been my only build on Domminik, is your point, is customer centricity to deliver sustainable, profitable growth. Because customer centricity, of course, for a corporation is not a purpose by itself. I'll just give you an example. Let's take that example that I used in Italy. So we know what the desired customer experience is. We know what expectations they have on an offer. Simplicity, speed, 2 data inputs, quote. To deliver that offer, we could have delivered hundreds of offers. Hundreds. We could have configured them however we wanted to do it. But of course, behind that, then we put the actuarial model, what optimizes our profitability. So behind the 2 data inputs that we have in Italy, there's a very strict risk-based rule engine that screens out the people we don't want to have and only puts the people into the portfolio that you want to have. So we did not move for 1 millimeter away from our strict profit and risk pricing. We just made it digestible for the client. We took the complexity of underwriting away from the client into data algorithms and back office and provided a superior customer experience without endangering profitability at all. In fact, because we delivered the higher NPS, this customer experience, the retention numbers and the follow-up sales are much higher than on a normal portfolio.
Thank you.
Ja, meine Frage ist auch an Joseph. Wir hatten schon in der Pause die Gelegenheit, wir kommen aus Österreich von einer Tageszeitung und bei uns ist es ja auch ganz spannend. Und Sie haben gesagt, in Ihrem Unternehmen, Sie haben eine Handvoll Leute, die wirklich in der digitalen Welt schon angekommen sind. Und bei uns ist es auch so, wir sind auch noch in der glücklichen Lage, super Gewinne zu erzielen. Ich glaube, wir sind im Benchmark durchaus besser als andere. Uns geht es noch sehr, sehr gut, aber gleichzeitig sind wir auch sehr langsam, sehr träge. Wie schaffen Sie es, wenn ich mich an diesen Film zurückerinnere, wie schaffen Sie es, das in den Köpfen Ihrer Mitarbeiter zu kriegen? Ich bin selbst Allianz-Kunde und wenn ich mir vorstelle, wenn ich den Film sehe und mir dann meinen 50-jährigen Berater vorstelle, also das passt überhaupt nicht zusammen jetzt in meinem Kopf und auch die Medienwelt, die Zeitungswelt, wie schaffen Sie das in die Köpfe der Leute zu kriegen, der Mitarbeiter?
Es ist top-down, bottom-up in unserer Erfahrung. Is that okay if I answer in German?
Of course.
Okay.
Just don't expect me to.
No, I'll pass on to you.
Oh, good. That'd be great.
Es ist top-down, bottom-up. Also ich glaube, etwas, was absolut wichtig ist, ich weiß nicht, ob Dominik oder Maggie es gesagt hat, ist Top-Management-Commitment. Das kann ich, glaube ich, Stein auf Bein schwören. Die oberste C-Ebene auf Holding-Level oder alle Landesgesellschaften haben das gekauft. Punkt. So. Das braucht man, weil ohne dieses Top-Level Commitment und Führung kann man noch keine gute Investitionsentscheidung machen. Wo es anfängt zusammenzubrechen, ist im Mittelmanagement. Da sind die Resistenzkräfte in einer typischen großen Organisation. Und wie wir es machen, ist wirklich sehr, sehr, wie sagt man, händisch. Gar nicht mit großen PowerPoint-Präsentationen und Jazzy, wie ich gesagt habe, kein Google, kein Amazon, kein Disruptive, bla bla bla, sondern wir reden dann mit dem Mittelmanagement wirklich, wie können wir den Vertrieb produktiver machen. Ich gebe Ihnen ein Beispiel. Wir statten den Vertrieb in Österreich aus mit Social Media, Facebook. Dazu müssen wir eine Homepage programmieren für die Agenten und dazu erlauben wir ihnen Zugang zu Facebook. Ganz einfaches Modell da ist, ein normaler Agent kann sein Kundenportfolio nicht besuchen. Nicht genug. Facebook erlaubt ihm, mehr Kontaktstrecke und Kontaktqualität zu erhöhen, erhöht die Produktivität und erlaubt dem Agenten mehr zu verkaufen. Das ist das, was ich meinte. Je mehr man digital an einfachen Vertrieb und an Sales orientiert, dann schaffen Sie diese Reise. Das Endziel ist das, was Sie gesehen haben da auf dem Film. Aber es wird ein paar Jahre dauern. Wir fangen an mit Homepages und Facebook für Agent. Next Step wird sein, wir digitalisieren die Agentur. Next Step wird sein, wir geben ihm modulare Produkte, die er konfigurieren kann. Next Step wird sein, dass er vielleicht nicht mehr Motor verkauft, weil es online läuft, sondern hauptsächlich Lebensversicherungsprodukte. Next Step wird sein, dass die Allianz massiv ins Direktgeschäft reingeht und über Telematics und so weiter und so weiter. Wissen Sie, was ich meine? Das ist eine mühsame Journey, wo Sie die Organisation bei der Allianz mitnehmen müssen. Es ist wirklich no magic wand und der CEO sagt, now we're digital und auf einmal holen wir uns 20.000 Leute von der Agentur rein. Das würde nicht bei der Allianz gehen.
Klaus Höllbacher, auch aus Österreich. Ich habe keine Frage, sondern eigentlich ein Statement. Und zwar habe ich jetzt ungefähr 2 Seiten an Notizen gemacht, nur von diesen Vorträgen hier, und unheimlich viele Ideen mitgenommen. Und wenn Sie fragen, wie groß mein Unternehmen ist, dann werden Sie sich wundern. Es hat nicht 1000, es hat nicht 100, es hat gerade mal 10 Mitarbeiter. Und aus welchem Business ich komme, ich leite eine Tanzschule. Ich möchte damit sagen, die Probleme, die hier vorhanden sind, sind bei mir ganz genau dieselben wie bei der Allianz oder bei BMW oder Ähnlichem. Wir haben dasselbe Problem mit Mitarbeitern, die Widerstand leisten, wenn Veränderungen kommen, mit Digitalisierung und Ähnlichem. Danke.
Vielen Dank. Hier ist eine Frage in der Mitte.
Hello again. I just want to ask a question. This is a technology question of the terminology SMAC that is used now to define social, mobile, analytics, and cloud. I'm just wondering, is one of those technologies the most critical? Is the first part of my question. And the second one is, which of those technologies do marketing organizations understand the least?
My mic turned up? There we go. So I would argue that analytics is both the most important and the least understood. Because without knowing how you're doing, you don't know what you should do or stop doing. And the other part of it, too, from a technology stack perspective, is what is all of that sitting on? You know, you've got it in the cloud, but when you look at real-time marketing and the fact that you're getting this data and you have the opportunity to adjust offers in real time, from a processing perspective, and this is a pure, like, what's the box that this database is running on, you know, that's a significant challenge in terms of getting to the place of real time. And of course, there are certain technologies that can help you do that. But that's something marketers need to start thinking about that they have not thought about in the past.
Maybe in the meanwhile, one question from myself to Domminik. You were kind of explaining that in the end, the retail environment will kind of grow together, coming from the offline and the online world. Now, especially here in Germany, as you also explained, we have kind of very slow offline retailing. Just today, the news broke that Nikolaus Berggren doesn't really know what to do with Karstadt and that he lost control of it. So my question would be, which offline retailer do you believe can really make it, can accelerate, can transform, and maybe not go the way that Weltbild just went?
It's something that I would actually politically not answer, being almost involved with many of them.
Not the best one, not the weakest.
Yeah, but maybe even that. Maybe it comes back more to the general answer to that. I personally think there are some ingredients to actually being able to adapt to this Darwinism change that we have here. One is I've seen a lot of fear over the last years that I think is never beneficial for doing anything. I mean, you should have a healthy paranoia, but you should not be fearful. And there was almost a fear and a negligence of digital doing and digital commerce within traditional German commerce. To say like, oh, they don't earn any money, and no, they're not big. So actually, it's a completely defensive attitude. If you take that, you are not going to succeed. It's the first one. So you need to open up and really understand even how big it is for you, but it for sure has a certain relevance. It will not wash you away most likely, but it has a certain relevance. So fear and not having fear, I think, is the first one. And the second one is trying to really incorporate digital structures and digital advantages into your user flow that you have in store. Because, I mean, essentially, you have the closest and best contact to customers that anybody could have, much closer than any digital player. Right? So, I mean, we are sitting here, I said that before, we're sitting in a physical conference, right? There is technology available that we could do that over phone, over video, whatever. So why are we sitting here, flying here, ignoring the carbon footprint of everything we do? Because human interaction is just different, despite digital technology coming up. And you have human interaction when you're a physical player. And you should use that, right? As I said, for education, for services, for all the stuff you see in the media now, right? Collecting in store, researching in store. You can combine these user journeys to your benefit rather than mimicking what the pure digitals are doing who don't have real human interaction. And I think that's the second one. And I've not seen any of that working very successfully yet in Germany. There's some smaller examples in the US, but I think it's just starting. So it's a very almost glass bowl question to ask who's going to succeed at that.
Thanks. There's another question here.
1, 2, 3. Okay. So, sorry. My name is Karl-Heinz Land, and Erich was so nice to introduce me as a digital Darwinist. To be honest, it's quite hard for me to keep on my chairs when I hear some of the sayings you are doing. As a matter of fact, I'm astonished. First of all, when the question comes up, what is the hardest technology to keep track with? We all know that mobile, this screen is now the first screen, it was the third screen, is changing the world very radical. And I'm wondering, for me, it's a mix of all things together, social, mobile, big data, and cloud. And to be honest, big data is nothing new. I was working 20 years ago for DM, for a metro in big data warehouse projects, BI, and projects where we try to find out what's the trends with our customers, with our products, with our clients, and the basket analysis is. So this is nothing new. The only thing which is new is the behavior of the consumer, and this is disruptive. I agree 100% with Erich. And the other thing, in my point of view, is the way we adapt as companies, and we are way too slow because the disruptiveness of the technology and the real Darwinism comes up because technology and the change in society is happening so quick that companies it's very hard for them to follow and to implement certain strategies. That is the biggest disruptive change. And so from my point of view, the hardest way for our clients, for companies, large and small companies, is speed. The speed is really, because evolution was a thing which happened in 100,000 years, in 1 million years. But digital evolution happens in 3 years, 5 years, and 7 years. And this is my point of view, makes it so hard for companies to follow, to find the right strategies. Just my 2 cents.
The one point that I would make is that if companies became dramatically quicker at making decisions without analytics, they could just go very quickly in the wrong direction. So I do firmly believe that analytics underpins everything. You need to understand what it means. And I think one of the biggest challenges is, yes, big data is not new. However, it's the volume, right? That we are now dealing with the volume of data that we did not have access to before. And I don't know if you need your mic. Maybe we're going to have an argument. You need your microphone back. But fundamentally, though, human behavior has not particularly changed. Right? Digital behavior, the way that we organize ourselves online, connecting with other people, we always did that. But now we can do it across communities of interest as opposed to physical communities.
Yeah.
Right? So fundamentally, we're still the same. We're making more and talking more and producing more data.
Yeah, but when people are asking what is the most important one, is it the mobile, the big data, and the social wave? And my belief is this is a perfect storm, and therefore we are living at the date of zero. The moment of truth is at the moment as we speak, and the only chance to survive is that I have a digital strategy for all 4 technologies. I need a big data, I need a social media, I need a mobile and a cloud technology and strategy.
So do you think, I'm going to turn the tables and ask you a question. Do you think that most organizations are prepared for that? Do you think, what kind of, are we going to see another extinction? Are we in the midst of a great extinction if we want to continue that metaphor?
As a matter of fact, the answer will pop up on the 24th of February. We have developed what we call the Digital Readiness Index for Germany, and we went through 13 different industries, from insurance to retail to automotive to airline and so on. And what we have discovered is that Germany is completely unprepared. And this is part of the problem is a certain reluctance by Germans. So first of all, we are not big technology believers, different than in France or in the United States. We are slow adapters for very many historical reasons. Yeah, we are very, let's say, thoughtful, but it takes quite a bit of time to do it. And therefore, the result, our first Digital Readiness Index was published in the Focus magazine for the retail industry. And guess who was the last ones? It was Penny, Praktika, and Promarkt. Praktika filed 1 week before we published the report insolvency. Promarkt is nearly ready to get off the screen, and Penny is doing very poor financially. So there is a direct correlation between digital readiness and fitness and success in the business. Yes, I believe we are not very well prepared.
It's a small sample size, but it's still an interesting trend.
Yeah.
In a way, it seems that your study reflects also our little audience here very well. Maybe one last question. The gentleman with the yellow tie, Sebastian, over here.
I'm working with communication agencies, and I'm a consultant for them, and I want to turn back to the title of this session here, Managing Customer Relationships. We have heard a lot about the technology. Most of what we heard was about technology, and I have to side with Maggie, who said that we've been doing most of the things we're talking about for 20 years, only using different technology. You know, like when 20 years ago you did hand raising by postcards, then people called in, used the telephone, and now they're using the internet. And digital, to me, is about two things as far as customers and customer relationships are concerned. It's about information and it's about interaction. And I think, and that's the question that I have for the panel here, is why do you think that this world is disruptive? This world, in my view, has only developed, and it's developing with technology, and we have to use these channels, very much like you said, but I cannot see that it's disruptive. I mean, we are marketers, and we are not technologists, in spite of what you said, that there will be marketing technologists in the future, but they will play their role in catering to those channels. So why is it disruptive in your view?
I think that it's disruptive because we are in a very different stage of technology evolution. Years ago, we supplemented TV advertising and radio with email marketing and built CRM systems. Today, the information was basically aggregated at the supplier or at the company or the brand and the business, and it was pushed out to consumers who didn't know anything. Today it's the other way around. Information doesn't flow one way from the company to the customer who educates the customer. It's the other way around. The customer is educated, and that's disruptive. If you are in the automotive industry, you have a person go into a dealership, and inside the dealership operates the mobile phone and does a price check from across the street and gets the better price. No more haggling, no more lowballing of customers. And I think that's just an illustration, but I think that's disruptive. And that's why, because of the power of the information to the consumer and to the extent to which the consumer ever more relies less and less on what companies have to say about their products and their services, and relies a lot more what other consumers have to say about those products. You know, because of that, I think it is so disruptive. Because we never would have thought that a consumer would rely on Wikipedia, that is written by consumers like us, as the authoritative dictionary over Britannia, or that was, and that has happened already.
Maybe you're right. I guess when the phone was invented, post offices were sitting shivering and saying, this is a disruption. When the steam engine came, when the car came, I guess horse suppliers were terrified. Now digital is coming and we're all terrified. I'm not sure whether it's a value add to discuss is it disruptive or not, to be really honest. I agree with you also, because disruption creates this paralysis. Oh my God. No, it's change. It's normal change. Client behavior is changing. Radical change. I think it does belong into the disruptive categories, but I don't think it's anything special versus major disruptions that happened in humankind. So I think the debate is a little bit dancing on a pin needle.
I would argue that it's much faster, right? That humans agree. Humans are humans, and we have always behaved the same way. There's no fun, like, technology has not dramatically changed our behavior. It's just accelerated it, made it more visible, and different things like that. But it's the speed that when you look at how a new behavior, a new technology can come in and destroy an industry. A great example in the United States is Blockbuster. So physical retail stores where you can get DVDs. What was the time frame? 10 years? And that business vanished, and Netflix completely disrupted and replaced it. And the idea that a company like Blockbuster now has to be able to transform quickly enough to be able to deal with that kind of change, that's the challenge, is that do we have, as organizations, do we have the speed to change as quickly as our consumers expect us to?
I think personally, that's the most interesting question of today, and I think it's the difference between evolution and revolution, right? So if something comes so fast, exactly as you said, the dinosaur will die. If it comes over hundreds or thousands of years, the dinosaur will adapt. And I think I'm quite sure the change we're facing right now is so fast that a lot of dinosaurs will die. That's exactly what you just said. Some have already. So if you're not adapting to something much faster than normal human or business adaptation cycles imply, you actually are going to have a huge issue. And this is exactly, I think, the topic of the whole day today.
And I think it's a technology and a business issue, right? That the cloud, for example, is a great example of how businesses can become more nimble. So instead of having a massive install of whatever on premise, you can pick and choose what you want from the cloud and change that very quickly based on your business requirements and affordably. You know, it's not a multi-year decision, it's tomorrow. And so you see the technologies that are facilitating, but do we recognize that and are we taking advantage of them is the question.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for all these insights, also to you for your questions. At first, I'd like to thank our speakers, Domminik, for showing us how you can really translate data into significant insight and then create value by that. So thanks, Domminik. Maggie, for motivating us all as marketeers to kind of feel like empowered and we can do something for the firms to come. Thank you for that. Joe, for showing us a real-life example, like not just the glossy, shiny object, but really kind of something in working mode and obviously a success story. So thanks so much for coming. Then to my colleagues, Erich and Roland, for guiding us also through the day together with me. Thanks, everyone. I also would like to extend the thanks to our organization team. On behalf of that, it's Andrea Wolf, Hartmut Heinrich, Lucas Dubois and Alex Karius, who really kind of made this event special. Obviously, also together with our partners, the MIF, which now seamlessly goes on, and SAP and HBR. So thanks so much for coming. The MIF will just take place after the lunch break. We now have a lunch break all together upstairs. And Daniel asked me that I guide you through that small little slot down there. So please just take the stairs, take your time and enjoy the discussion, the food, and hopefully there was some good inspiration for you guys. Thank you.